Bam, bam. And we're live. There we go. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to Cryptocito. I'm joined today by two of the co-authors of the Atom 2.0 white paper. We've got Jihan, who you already know. We had this really cool episode a few months ago, deep dive on interchain security. I think a lot of people learned a lot from that episode. And then Udit, for you, it's the first time here on my channel. Welcome. And I think
Thanks for having me.
yeah, welcome both of you. And maybe we can start off with Udit, that you can share a little bit on your journey, your Cosmos journey, and also some of the contributions that you did for the 2.0 vision.
Yeah, for sure. So I got involved in the Cosmos ecosystem early last year. Was super interested in the direction of I was like kind of admiring Cosmos from the outside a little bit. Knew a little bit about what was going on. I was particularly admiring it for this kind of like idea of like sovereign interoperability. I have started a co-op. I've been part of many co-ops, and just the general kind of vibe of like, people coming together and like moving towards a vision together and, pooling resources and working together was like very exciting. And Cosmos kind of allows for that, right? Like we have all these kind of like communities that are all building towards their own visions, but can all kind of interoperate, which is very similar, in my opinion, to the Federation of Cooperatives. So that's originally what kind of like nerd sniped me, like the political side of things. And then more and more as I started looking into it, the technology stack obviously was very exciting. One of the things that I've been involved in Cosmos is helping with Cosmos Hub testnets. So I've been helping the Cosmos Hub team run their public testnets. Actually, one of the things we're very excited about right now is the new testnet program that we're launching for Cosmos Hub with the launch of interchain security. That's called Game of Chains, and I think we'll talk about that a little bit today too. And yeah, I also very interested in governance issues and helped think through some of the governance aspects of the white paper.
Awesome, yeah. And Manu is already asking, what is the Atom killer application? That is probably interchain security. I mean, it has been in the works for a long time, and it's finally coming to life. And like Udit mentioned, Game of Chains is the incentivized testnet that's coming up. After, I think there was, what was the first one? Game of Nodes, and then Game of Zones.
Stakes was the first one, and then there was Game of Zones. Game of Stakes was like when they were testing out proof of stake, and then Game of Zones when IBC launched. And this is the third iteration of the game series with Game of Chains being interchain security.
And there's a podcast.
At some point, we're going to run out of things to say game of something.
There's actually a podcast, that's why I confused it, called Game of Nodes, and that's where like a bunch of come together, and like that's why. But yeah, it's cool. And yeah, I think Jihan, you already people already might be quite familiar with you, but maybe you can also share a little bit specifically on the 2.0 vision. We all know that you have been one of the core engineers, contributors to ICS on the technical side, but maybe you can share specifically also in the paper and the new vision, like what your contributions were and like what you're most excited about.
Yeah, so the I guess the Atom 2.0 vision, I think, is how I see it is we're sort of it's kind of a refinement of what is the hub for, what are we going to focus on, what are we not going to focus on, and what's the priority of these different elements. And so I would say it was mostly Sam Hart and Zucky came up with a lot of the core of it, which is very cool. And it's basically trying to have this kind of flywheel of sort of a combination of different elements that all sort of reinforce each other in positive feedback loops. So, and kind of in a way, it's like the features together are sort of like designed to create for the Cosmos Hub to be sort of a super app of sorts. And so the first part of that, of course, is interchain security. So with interchain security, other chains, other projects can use the Cosmos Hub as a platform for launching their projects, getting security. The one we're working on right now is interchain security v1, or replicated security, and it will also be used, though, not only for other projects, but also for anything else in the white paper. Like almost everything we're doing on the hub now, we're doing as consumer chains. So new features. They're not going to go into the core hub software. They're going to go into consumer chains. So that's going to make things a lot easier from an engineering perspective, because it sort of separates the release cycles and makes it so you have less to coordinate in general, because consumer chains can update and sort of be updated and stuff by themselves. But then also it's used for it's going to be used for new projects launching on it, which we have a bunch of exciting ones, some of which will appear in the test net. And so these projects then kind of become part of the as Zucky calls it, the Atom economic zone. And so since they're all backed by the same security, they can kind of preferentially work with each other. And so that's going to be really powerful. You get this sort of tight integration where you have this sort of family, and some of the products in it are made by the same team. For instance, like more of the core things, and then some of them are coming from other teams, but they all kind of will work very closely together and be more than the sum of their parts and sort of pick up speed. And so then the other two big pieces of the paper are the scheduler and the allocator. And the scheduler will help chains more closely be able to more closely coordinate transactions. So you have more seamless interactions between the chains with the help of MEV services, which will be kind of external participants in that system. And then also the allocator sort of allows the Atom to kind of invest in projects, but not in a way of just giving them a bunch of funds. You're actually trading kind of bonds of both the tokens so that they're aligned, but it's also like, there's more accountability and more control. We're not control over the project, but it's a more sort of stable and less risky kind of method of building economic alignment.
Yeah, and I see we have around 30 people in here, so make sure everybody to share this link to this live stream, because that's very, very important stuff, especially as we currently have 3 proposals on the Cosmos Hub network. And it's, I think, a bit confusing for some people, even for myself. Like sometimes I'm like, I lose track. Like there's so many texts and forum entries and this and that. And then Atom 0 came out of nowhere overnight. Then we have Atom 2.0 that went on chain, and now we also have Atom 1, which is the proposal by Jay Kwan. And actually, during this interview today, I also want to talk a little bit about these elements that you just mentioned, right? Talk a little bit about the allocator and also the treasury. Also, I think liquid staking, maybe that's also something we can talk about. Your views on that and how important it is for the success and future of the Cosmos Hub. But first, let's maybe talk a little bit about the current, these proposals, because I think it's confusing for some people. So we got Atom 0, which I think Jay uploaded, and then 2 hours later, it's like, actually, I don't like this idea anymore. And now it's kind of like, I don't know, it's just sitting there. Then we have Atom 2.0, which has been in the works for a long time, has been announced at Cosmoverse around a month and 10 days ago. There has been a bunch of feedback also from the community. It went through a little evolution, also with the treasury especially. And then Atom 1, which is also from Jay, came out an hour after Atom 2.0 went live. And I just saw on the chain, actually, the Cosmos 2.0 vision, Cosmos Hub 2.0 vision seems to be winning, right, by far. So what do you guys make out of this? How closely have you been following whatever Jay is saying also about the photon, about the constitution? Is it something that you think there's some ideas that could be implemented in 2.0? Or what are your general thoughts about this whole, I guess, I don't know how you want to call it, but Atom new vision for the Cosmos Hub, I guess.
Well, I'll just say on the idea that it's confusing. I don't think that it's. I mean, maybe it's confusing. Obviously, I can't say it's not confusing, but I think that's it's a good thing. It's a good thing that there's these multiple proposals, and it kind of shows that the Cosmos Hub is a decentralized system, and it's I think is a good thing. Like if you're going to follow what what any sort of congressional body is doing, in representative democracies, like that might be confusing too. But that's just, if you follow it closely enough, you can understand what the different things being proposed are. And I think it's really great that, that Atom 2.0 came out. A lot of people said, hey, wait, let's change some of this stuff. It's been changed. It's back out again. There's also Atom 1. I think it's great to have a diversity of viewpoints and people being able to vote on those. Because I think a lot of chains, the CEO of the chain, although it's kind of a, but a lot of chains, I mean, they do have a CEO. Like there's a guy who just says what things are going to be, right? And so a lot of chains out there, I mean, and maybe they'll grow bigger, they'll grow to be decentralized as the hub is, but they'll kind of bring something out and say, hey, this is the new vision, and then people will be like, wow, yeah, great, and they vote on it, and it would go through and pass, and no debate, 98%, whatever, and it would, if that was what was going on with Atom 2.0, I would be sad, because it would kind of show that it's not really a mature blockchain. But I think that the debate is awesome.
You made a.
I would echo Jahan.
Yeah, go ahead. That's not on the content. I know you're asking about the content, but yeah, I wanted to share that.
Yeah, I was just going to say I would 100% echo Jahan that this is just a sort of like marker of decentralized governance. That we do have these competing proposals going up, and people have very strong opinions, and they are engaged in very thoughtful, rigorous discourse around what is the new vision. But it seems to me right now that Atom 2.0 vision is coming out ahead. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that, there was this kind of long period in the where the authors were, taking time to incorporate feedback from the community. And there were a bunch of changes that were made, right? There were changes made to the tail issuance. There was originally going to be a huge mint to a treasury, but now that's happening kind of incrementally and first happening in the community pool. There were lots of questions about checks and balances that have been, talked about a lot already. So I think people are feeling quite comfortable about it. And it's exciting to see that, the hub is kind of choosing a new direction to move forward with.
On that comment regarding Cosmos doesn't have a CEO, Jihan, you made a poll, right? Who actually won that poll?
Jay Kwan won.
Oh.
But it was two parts. It was the first part and a second part.
I was even nominated. Thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly. Totally. Sorry about your loss. Next time, maybe.
Wait, I lost against Jack Zempolin, so that's a loss I'm happy to take.
Yeah. So, what it looks like it's actually going to be is it's going to be Jack Zempolin and Jay Kwan are going to be co-CEOs now going forward. So
the actual unofficial CEO, which is Charles Hoskinson, and his.
Yes.
Yeah. What does he
and
have?
His eagle.
Eagle, yes, he has an eagle. Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. But yeah, so no, but I think actually that's really the core strength of Cosmos, is that even people like me and what we did with Cosmos, I think we couldn't have done this in any other ecosystem, because everything that these other ecosystems are doing are centrally organized by one institution, one person in the end of the day. That's managing all the marketing, the direction, the roadmap, right? And I think that's the cool thing about Cosmos, is that you have so many ideas, which sometimes from the outside can be perceived as confusing, and it is perceived as confusing, and also maybe, drama. And I think also there's some things we can work on to improve. And I know, Udit, you do a lot of work also on the governance side to make sure that the community is more embedded in these decisions. But I think over the past year, and I'm relatively new to Cosmos, especially compared to you, Jihan, but I feel that's really the core strength, and that's what makes Cosmos Cosmos after all. But I want to talk about regarding Atom 2.0, and then we will go deep on interchain security. Liquid staking has been one of the biggest things. Also mentioned in the white paper, there's a whole section about it, where Jay, and also I know Sunny is quite critical about, because they believe that poses systemic risk to the underlying system. So what are your thoughts on liquid staking in general, and how is it currently structured in Atom 2.0? And where do you see that this is not actually a systemic risk because it's actually beneficial for Atom and the Cosmos Hub itself?
I mean, I definitely, I don't know where I stand on liquid staking, but it's a big change to the proof of stake model. That being said, you can't stop liquid staking. So it's not like, it's not about like whether we want liquid staking or not. Is liquid staking will happen. So it's always possible to have liquid staking. The Stride is doing it. So the liquid staking module that's going to go in an upcoming hub release is going to make it easier for somebody to switch to liquid staking without unbonding their atoms, but they'll still be able to do it. So I think that we kind of need to, and you could try. So the way that Stride works is that you send them your atoms, and I'm apologize if I'm getting this wrong to the Stride team, but you basically send them your atoms, and then they stake them. Well, it's the chain, the Stride chain stakes them on your behalf, and to different validators, and you get sort of a token representing the basket of everything that the Stride chain is staked. And so the liquid staking module, all that it does is it means you don't have to. You're able to send the atoms to them while they are still delegated. So you don't have to wait for the the unbonding, the 3-week unbonding period to get them liquid staked. So I think that we do need to come to terms with liquid staking and figure out, and kind of see how it looks, how things look with liquid staking. And the thing that I think that people are worried about liquid staking is that it changes the proof of stake model a lot, because the proof of stake model is supposed to be that you have all of these, you have all these delegators, and these are, wide variety of people. It's decentralized. And so because there's so many people, they're not all going to coordinate to attack something. But to run the network, you do need like a few, smaller number of nodes. And so you delegate to a validator who you think is not going to attack the network. So with liquid staking, you're giving the responsibility of delegating to which validators to delegate to. You're giving that responsibility away to a liquid staking chain. And so in some ways, the liquid staking chain then controls the chain that it's operating on, because they can, it can choose the validators. So I think there's a lot of questions about what happens if that's compromised, and how does that look? So I think there's definitely valid questions around liquid staking. But at the same time, Ethereum, for example, it's just so at the same time, people don't know where to stake. People don't know where to stake there. Like most retail investors just don't really have a good metric for deciding where to stake. And so to me, that kind of indicates the information that most regular delegators are bringing in isn't that good if they themselves didn't know how to make that decision. So it's, that's kind of a thing too, but I think we just got to, Ethereum tried to make it so everyone has to run their own validator to get away from this issue. But all that did was, liquid staking was on Ethereum first because people didn't want to run their own validator. So, and so the Ethereum version is actually a lot more centralized. So I think there's definitely a lot of valid questions that we need to, we're just going to have to see how things evolve in proof of stake.
From your, or Udi, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Well, the only other thing that I would add is that something relevant to liquid staking is already happening with, centralized exchanges, where centralized exchanges, you give your tokens to an entity that kind of delegates on your behalf. So liquid staking, in a sense, is kind of like the decentralized equivalent of that. And, we've already kind of seen like, retail wants to use something like a centralized exchange because the UX is so much better. And liquid staking kind of, is the best kind of like decentralized alternative to that, in my opinion. And like 100% I agree with Jahan that like, it's not a question of should we go with liquid staking or not. It's that liquid staking is happening. And so what is the best that we can do given that it is already coming? And I think the white paper takes that position and, takes that position and takes it to the logical endpoint, which is, okay, well, how do we give the kind of governance control over these sorts of things? And given that it's happening, how do we, ensure that we can utilize these liquid tokens in the best possible way. For example, using the hub as a fund. That's the purpose of the allocator.
Yeah, and but sure. There's also, I mean, we have actually proved now since Stride went live that there's strong product market fit for it. ST Atom is the 6th largest pool on Osmosis, over $10 million worth of liquidity that's on there. So like I say, users really want to use these products. I know also a lot of users are still stuck in CeFi because that's where they sometimes pay higher yields. And I think DeFi can tackle that problem with liquid staking. But I have one question for you, a very direct question. Do you think that the Cosmos Hub or Atom should be liquid staked at 100%? So that we should basically have a 100% liquid staking rate on the hub at some point. And if so, would there be any issues, challenges, problems, risks to the underlying base native atoms, if that were the case?
I will not probably liquid stake my atoms because it's this just personal preference. It's probably, it seems like it's just going to be more complication. And I'm happy getting the staking rewards. And basically, if to liquid stake, right, I would liquid stake, and then by liquid staking, I'll be able to take those and maybe put those into a pool, an LP or something. But I've tried LPing before, and it's not a guaranteed way to make money. So, it's definitely, you have to be sophisticated to kind of know what you're doing, because you're kind of actually buying the side that everyone doesn't want to buy, right? So it's like, to me, I've dabbled in DeFi before for looking for yield, but it's never been super productive for me or kind of worth the time to figure it out. So personally, I think myself, I'll probably just keep it regular staked, at least at first, just because I won't really have anything to do with those liquid staked atoms. So I don't think we'll reach 100% for that reason. But I think that it's very appealing for a lot of people. And then also being able to not being locked in, it's also great.
And how do you think, I mean, through liquid staking, obviously, you're basically, from a retail and high level perspective, kind of like incentivized to actually do that, because you might get higher yields, but there's still kind of like risks involved, especially as we have different providers that have different approaches. Some have their own chains, some use interchain security. But what do you think is that, as we talk about interchain security, how do we ensure that, I mean, in the current tokenomics of Atom, the goal is to have 2/3 of the Atom staked, and inflation is kind of like pegged to that 2/3. So when it goes below that 2/3 of staked atoms, inflation will go up to incentivize people to stake. Do you think that liquid staking is enough, or what other features or ideas does Atom 2.0 propose to ensure that at least 2/3 of the atoms are staked? Because I guess that's kind of like the base layer to ensure that interchain security is sustainable, right? That we have this underlying security that makes Atom so secure as compared to other chains in Cosmos.
I don't think it's actually, well, okay, so I'm going to differ a little bit with what you're saying here. I don't think that it's necessarily the 2/3 of Atom stake that make it secure, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but I think it's more it's really more the total amount that's staked. So right, I actually have it in front of me. Right now we have 202 million times 15. It's about $3 billion staked, and that's the economic security. So I think that if you went down below, if you went down to a half, it'd be $2 billion. And so I don't know if there's, obviously 2/3 is like the target, but it's not like once you cross 2/3, it's somehow, there's other things in proof of stake though, where once you cross 2/3, there's something, it's like a phase change or whatever. But for the staked amount, as far as I know, it's like the more the better, but also it's not like you cross some threshold, like boom, and secure,
Also, as far as I remember, the white paper also has this provision where if the bonding ratio falls below 2/3, the original sort of issuance regime kicks back in, which further sort of incentivizes people to stake their tokens.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's maybe move on to Game of Chains and the incentivized testnet that's coming up. What is, maybe this was announced on October 27, 8 days ago. And it's basically a competition that will, I guess, at one side, it will teach also validators how to optimize for interchain security, because they will also have to run nodes on these onboarded zones that use interchain security. So maybe you can explain what Game of Chains is and how it's structured. There's also like a competition involved with prizes, and what are some of the numbers, like how many projects sign up or how many validators sign up, and what's the current stage on that?
Yeah, totally. So Game of Chains is an adversarial testnet launching November 7th. Well, we're going to kick it off on November 7th. That's Monday. And it is the third in a sort of series of games, incentivized games that we've had on the Cosmos Hub. The first one was Game of Stakes when Proof of Stake launched. And then the second one was Game of Zones when IBC launched. And this is Game of Chains with the launch of interchain security. And the goals of this, like you said, are basically to help validators kind of build confidence around this new technology. We're expecting the sort of like operational work for validators to shift quite a bit once interchain security launches, right? They'll be voting on new proposals, trying to like assess, the quality of new consumer chains that are launching. They'll also have to expand their node operations because, you'll be running binaries for all these new chains that are launching. So first, the goal is to kind of help them understand, what is this new workflow going to look like for them? You can think of it kind of like a training program for them. And then the second, it's an adversarial testnet, is also to help us kind of discover what are some of the interesting attack vectors in interchain security, and help us like uncover any sort of like critical issues or bugs and so on before the launch of interchain security happens on the mainnet, so we can kind of address those beforehand. And we have like a bunch of tasks, challenges planned for people. We've already, I think we have like over 80 Cosmos Hub validators that have signed up for it. And there's a prize pool of 20,000 atoms total for, people achieving various milestones. And there's also some cumulative prizes at the end for overall winners. And we're also trying to incentivize people to, build new tools, some new sort of public goods for the interchain security paradigm. So that is all kind of incentivized as well. Johan, do you want to add a few things?
Yeah, I could just not necessarily on the testnet. I mean, we're also going to be having several real consumer chains in the testnet.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to be exciting. I want to add on the validator workload and the entire process around interchain security. That's been a big focus for me and Udit, is kind of figuring out how we can make sure that consumer chain upgrades and launches and upgrades and everything all go really smoothly, and also without being a huge load on validators. So we basically have this is for production, not just the testnet, obviously. So we kind of have a whole plan of how we can kind of steward consumer chains through the process, kind of like what parts of the process are our responsibility from working on the Cosmos Hub, and then what parts are the people who are working on the consumer chains responsibility, and then also technically. In the past couple months, me and my team, we've been going through the kind of attack vectors. So interchain security, replicated security, V1. It sort of does suppose that validators are looking at the consumer chains that are coming in and making sure they're not malicious. But we're also trying to make as possible, make sure as much as possible that basically, even if the consumer chain is malicious, it can't like harm the hub or harm the validators. And so that will also help. That will help reduce workload because you don't have to really check them as carefully. It'll be like validators can kind of just, have a process for spinning up new boxes, which they already do. So it's been a lot of the work as well.
Nice. And what happens to validators that are inactive, that are not participating neither at Game of Chains nor when ICS actually goes live? And we can talk about timelines in a second, but what will happen with them? Because I guess after all, like all validators have to be active and have to also run on these new chains. Like what would happen if like some validators are just not taking part at all and just ignoring it, everything?
Well, they'll get slashed for downtime and jailed on the hub. That means they won't be validating anymore until they get the consumer chain up and running. And I don't anticipate this. That sounds dramatic, and I guess it is, but I don't anticipate it really being a problem because the thing is, just by the way that consensus works, if more than 1/3 of the validators, if there's a serious problem with consumer chain, and that results in more than 1/3 of the validators not being able to or not wanting to bring it up, then the consumer chain itself won't run and nobody will be slashed for downtime. So I think the cases where you have validators where we have cases where validators, like less than 1/3 of validators kind of aren't running something, I think you can say that's more kind of on those validators rather than, a problem of a consumer chain. And that could be tweaked as well. I mean, that probably we'd have to do a little bit more work on that because that gets kind of deep into the Tendermint internals, but you could also make it so that like you've got to have, 3/4 of validators running consumer chain. So, and what we also will probably do an easier change is that we'll have probably very long on consumer chains at first. We'll let you validators be down for a much longer time. So on the hub right now, if you're down for more than like, I think 16 hours, that's where you get downtime. But on consumer chains, we might relax that a lot, at least at first, so that people have a little bit more of a margin for error during the time when everyone's learning about how it works.
Yeah, but I guess that will basically... Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, this also speaks to the reason why a program like this is the Game of Chains program is really important, because it kind of helps validators understand what are the kind of challenges they're going to have to face when they're actually doing this in production.
Yeah, and I think like that's the main thing, I guess, for the next 2-3 months is to really bring all validators to educate them what they will have to do when ICS goes live, but also to make sure they're all active. But I guess that concept would make probably Atom the most active validator ecosystem out there, because as a validator, you really have to be on top of the things. Like Gian also said, evaluate and vet the consumer chains that want to onboard, because there's also governance gatekeeping in that sense that you can't just like launch as a consumer zone. You have to go through governance. So yeah, very, very interesting stuff. Everybody that's delegated to Stakecito, don't worry. We have already applied actually for Game of Chains, so we're going to be taking part. But we also have to see, like, maybe we need to hire another person to expand, and also to make sure that we have the capacity to vet and onboard all these new zones that are coming on the hub, and also take part in governance, right? Like there's so much that's coming, but I think it's really exciting. But where do we currently stand? I mean, Game of Chains is going live on Monday, you said, November 7th. How long is it running? I saw on Twitter that
4 weeks.
4 weeks.
Approximately 4 weeks. Yeah.
And then after that, I guess there's a little feedback and potentially final refining. And then are we already ready to launch, or what's the game plan?
Yeah, we're trying to launch in January. So yeah, right now we have we basically have a version of interchain security that's running on. We essentially have the current version of the Cosmos Hub with interchain security in it, and that's what's going to be tested in Game of Chains. And it's there may be further modifications after Game of Chains, but essentially it's pretty much done. We're going to be testing it out and then hopefully launching with that. So yeah, there's a few features that we're still We might even do, I'm not sure about this, Uday, but like you have to, we were talking about this yesterday. We could maybe do even an upgrade during Game of Chains, because that's probably the upgrade process in and of itself is probably something we want to test. But in any case, there's two more things that we'll need to get in that are not in right now, and one of those is key delegation. So that's the validators can use different keys on different chains, which allows for much more sort of more safety, I guess, because they don't have to use just good OPSEC, basically not using the same key. And then there's also a circuit breaker that we're still working on, which basically makes it so that if a consumer chain, like we were talking about this downtime slashing, right? So if you have a malicious consumer chain, they could like slash like every validator at once and kind of take over the validator set, right? And that you're supposed to check the binary to make sure it doesn't do that. And we will obviously, you know, the team at Informal and other organizations will be checking that for the first few consumer chains. We'll be checking it very carefully, but we want to get, like I said, we want to get to a point where it's more like worry-free and you kind of launch something and just, you know, don't run if it's not profitable, but it's not like a big security thing. So one of those parts of that is the circuit breaker we're adding, which makes it so that a consumer chain can't slash like all the validators at once. So if they start slashing a lot of validators, that gets slowed down and stopped. So people can, you know, figure out what's going on with that.
And then what is the launch or basically rollout of IBC when it's going to go live in January? Do we have an on-chain proposal that would say, hey, there's a major upgrade coming, ICF is coming to the mainnet of the Cosmos Hub. And then after that, I guess the projects like Neutron, which we already know is one of them, or Stride, they also announced that, or Circle that are building their asset issuance chain with also USDC coming to the Cosmos Hub natively. Would that mean that all of these zones individually make on-chain proposals like all at the same time, like as launching partners, or how does that work?
We'll probably space it out a little bit more. I think that, yeah, I think we should be able to do that. For sure, we're going to want to have like the first, there only be one at first to let people get acclimated. And I can't say right now which one of those it'll be, but we'll certainly space it out a little bit, but we'll get through the list of projects that are waiting pretty quickly and with increasing speed as people get more used to it.
The first thing would be an upgrade proposal to upgrade to the ICS stack.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then following that will be all the consumer chain proposals.
Is there any alpha leaks that you guys can share in terms of other chains, other projects that want to launch or use interchain security at launch?
There's one that's very exciting. I don't know if they've officially launched those. So I guess I don't know if I'm allowed to leak it. But there's one that I'm very excited about. Oh, yeah.
We only have 60 people watching. It's not like crypto Twitter.
No, I have to ask Yelena. I have to ask Yelena. I don't think I think they want to coordinate it somehow, but yeah, I guess I should have asked her before the show.
Well, you can drop her a message in the group and see if she responds.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, we got a lot of big projects already lined up, right? Like Stride that is doing liquid staking, obviously that's already live. We've got Neutron, which is a Cosmos smart contract chain that also does want to bring on Lido as a liquid staking solution. Then we have the USDC project or USDC issuance from Circle. There's a couple that have already been announced that I'm really exciting, I guess.
Yeah.
Another one, it's not going to be at launch, but one thing that we've been, me and Udit and actually Jake from DAO have been talking about recently is actually the idea of having a consumer chain with DAO on it, which will function as the Atom 2.0 or Atom 1.0 or whatever. There's a lot of new governance sort of, whatever it ends up being. And yeah, whatever, all these proposals, they all have these new governance mechanisms that they want to put into place. And so we're looking at having a consumer chain that's got DAO on it, which will be like part of the new sort of governance system for the hub. And also even looking at having consumer chain with Gnolang on it. So yeah, I think there's a lot of really interesting things we can do.
Yeah, I mean, in general, I think some of the new features proposed in the white paper too, I think they could all be on consumer chains. So you can expect a lot of consumer chains in the future with pub specific features.
Yeah, but right now we also have a long kind of list. We have a list of external projects that want consumer chains, and we basically, given that we don't want to drop them all at once, we do have kind of a backlog to work through all those proposals to get those up. So yeah.
So how many, can you say like a rough number, like how many projects have reached out, say, hey, I want to explore this ICS thing on Cosmos?
I mean, I think in terms of projects that reached out, I'm sure very, very large number. I think there's like probably, I think there's about like, I'm totally like, this BD is not necessarily my thing, so maybe I'm totally misquoting this, but I think it's like maybe around 16 sort of that are actively kind of in the funnel, I guess. And then I think we have about like 7 who are pretty much confirmed, and we got to get them into the rotation. So yeah, it's really.
Is Quicksilver still happening actually? Because they also said they were going to use ICS.
Yeah. So Quicksilver, yeah, they want to. They want to launch their own chain, and they want to do a governance proposal on that chain to see whether they should do ICS. But it's kind of funny. Stride at the same time. Stride is confirmed. So Stride's actually helping us develop parts of interchain security. Nice. So Aiden from Stride is actually working. Like, it's pretty impressive. They're just like, yeah, let's, we're gonna help you build this. So basically, they're working on this code, which is what we call a standalone to consumer transition. So that's where you have a standalone chain and then seamlessly switches to being a consumer chain. And they're actually helping us build that out because they're going to need it. They're going to need it for their launch. They have their own chain already, so they're going to need that to transition to being a consumer chain. And then also we'll use that same code to probably reconfigure a little bit and kind of the same sort of package, which will be a consumer to standalone transition. So that's going to let chains, if they are a consumer chain, they want to become a regular chain, they'll just be able to do that seamlessly with this code. And that will also be the same code that's going to let consumer chains transition seamlessly to mesh security when it's ready.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I was impressed when I met the Stride team at Cosmos. Like, they came with like 10 people and running around with their pink hats. Super passionate and super active.
I think we'll also see, though, for liquid staking, like I was saying before, I got into a little bit, but you have, in some sense, if a liquid staking provider has a lot of the stake on a chain, they sort of control those. They don't necessarily control the validators they're staked to, but right, they could restake to another validator that they did control if that chain's governance decided to. So, if you have a blockchain that's got a very high staked amount, but most of that staked amount's coming and being controlled by a liquid staking provider that has a low amount of stake and is on a standalone chain, then you essentially, I would say, in some sense, you don't have the economic security of that high amount of stake anymore. You just have the economic security of the liquid staking provider, because they could go and they could do anything, right? So if someone took over the liquid staking provider, they could also then use that to take over the other chain, even if the other chain was a lot bigger. So I think that for liquid staking providers especially, interchain security is a very, very important feature. We'll see how it plays out, but I think that there will be a clear preference for liquid staking providers that use replicated security to interchain security from the hub to basically to run their chains, because then you still have the high economic security. So if you're a liquid staking provider working on Osmosis has about 320 million worth of stake, but the liquid staking provider is running on replicated security from the Cosmos hub. The Cosmos hub has about 1.6 or more now. I think the price has just gone up overnight, but 1.6 billion in stake. Then you don't compromise Osmosis economic security at all. Versus it's the other way around. If you have a liquid stake provider that's got a very small, let's just say they have only 10 million or something in their own stake, and they're controlling 320 million, that's not a good situation. So I think that in the future, though, I think that probably liquid staking, the end game for this is that liquid staking providers will have will be running on replicated security from like a lot of other chains too. So like any chain, like let's say that you're running on like Stride is providing, and this is not, I don't know what Stride's plans are, right? It's just complete speculation. I'm just using them as an example, right? But let's say Stride is running and they're doing liquid staking services for, for JUNO. Maybe JUNO also has our replicated security module installed, down the road at some point, and they're actually providing security to the sort of Stride zone, and then you'll have liquid staked, or liquid staking is controlled through replicated security by like each chain that it's on. I think that's probably the safest configuration long term. But until then, going with the economic security of the hub is going to be about as safe, unless you're like providing liquid staking for a chain that's like a lot bigger than the hub even. So yeah.
Sounds like liquid mesh security. There was also a comment yesterday from Do Kwon, or basically a tweet, where he announced, I think it's called Feather. I didn't even get the time to read it. I think, Jian, you have some comments on this. We can talk about this in a second. But yeah, it sounds like shared security and different variations and concepts of it are coming, and they're coming big time. Sunny has also talked a lot about mesh security, and they actually developed something at Cosmoverse at the hackathon, together with also Jake and I think Ethan Frey also. Really cool stuff. But before we talk about this, what is going to change once interchain security is live? What is going to change for delegators? They will also have some benefits, right, from delegating to a validator that's active, that hopefully doesn't get slashed for being inactive. So what does change? And also, how does the Atom revenue model change for the Cosmos Hub with ICS?
Yeah, so one of the things that will change is that that fees and even inflationary rewards from consumer chains will go to Atom stakers, and not all of them. The consumer chains have their own tokens, and those tokens do get a lot of the fees and rewards, and that's that's part of the deal. But the provider chain, the hub, does get some rewards out of it. So stakers will. And that's also part of the governance process. So basically, if you think that a consumer chain, if the consumer chain is saying, hey, we're not gonna pay any rewards back, then the delegators and validators might say, well, that doesn't sound like a very good deal because we're going to be working for free. The way it works is that you'll look at the proposal and say, is this chain paying enough rewards? And maybe validators will say, hey, this chain actually, it's going to be really hard to run. So like, let's say it's a bridge chain, and bridge to another ecosystem, right? A lot of times they require another piece of software to run alongside the validator node. Maybe they'll say, hey, you know what, that's a lot of work. So these guys need to pay a higher reward. So I think that's going to be something that delegators should pay attention to, is what are the rewards going to be? And then they'll also receive those rewards. So some consumer chains will just use Atom for fees. It's pretty straightforward then, just get more atoms. And then some consumer chains will actually, use their own token for fees. And in that case, those tokens will be coming over, or a small percentage of the fees from those tokens will be coming over onto the hub, and hub delegators will receive those as well.
Let's maybe take an example for the native issuance of USDC that was announced by Circle. If I stake and delegate my Atom to an active validator, does it also mean I would earn USDC as part of the fees? And then on top, do they also have their own governance token on that consumer zone, or how does that work in that specific case?
I'm not completely up to date on what they're planning. I know that it's been discussed using USDC itself for fees, and it's also been discussed just having it be Atom fees on that zone. And with the USDC, will be issuing on a generic asset issuance chain, basically, and so that chain is not only going to be for USDC. You can think maybe USDC is almost like an anchor tenant there, I guess, using it, but it's also going to be used for other types of assets. For instance, you could issue, you could issue corporate bonds on that chain, or you could issue, assets representing real estate or something, right? So it's like, it's designed to be generic. And so given that, it's also kind of hard to say, okay, well, it's just going to be USDC that's used for the fees, because maybe that's not the only thing going on, right? So that's one reason to use Atom. I'm not sure where the decision stands right now. That's within that team, I guess. But yeah, if it is if it does use USDC as fees, then the delegators in the hub would be receiving some USDC in there. They'd be able to claim some USDC from their stake.
Nice. But are they like closely in touch with you guys and asking questions what you guys recommend to them, or how is the collaboration with them, or are they entirely doing their own stuff?
No, they're closely in touch. I just don't know where the decision stands right now. So but I've been involved in kind of discussing the different options. So that's what I was just talking about there with some of the considerations we were talking about. I don't want to say something that's not where the current thinking is.
Cool. All right. So maybe to finish the stream, what are some thoughts that you guys have about mesh security, which is kind of like, I guess, the end game for interchain security, where zones or hubs or chains, whatever, secure each other. And then also, I think, Gian, you have some comments on Do's proposal or idea from what he tweeted yesterday about the Terra version of interchain security, which is called Feather, if I'm not mistaken. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, mesh security. We've got a very interesting thing we're bringing out here, which is we have this interchain security modeler. We developed after hearing about mesh security, we developed a mathematical model at Informal to be able to characterize what the security is. That was my colleague Marius Poke built that model, and we've taken it, we put it into an app, and so anybody can use this app to basically put in various configurations. Like you say, hey, we've got we've got the Cosmos hub is providing this much security. We've got Osmosis providing this much security. JUNO providing this much security. The consumer chain has this much staked of its own token, and then you find out what the cost to censor and the cost to control will be. So we're able to put a really we're going to take a really exact look at what the economic security provided by mesh security, and also by you can do replicated security in the model as well. So you can kind of take a very close look at those and compare it. And one of the things that's come out of that is that I don't know. I think it's just very interesting to see what the economic security is. And well, one of the big takeaways though is that if you have, like, we have a scenario, I have set up a scenario where it was, and we have a blog post coming out today. I think it might have already come out. Maybe it was supposed to go out yesterday. We were having problems with markdown and stuff. But anyway, one of the interesting things that came out of that was that if you look at replicated security using only the hub, and then you compare that to mesh security using the hub, and I had a scenario with 5 other provider chains, sort of, big names, Osmosis, JUNO, different ones, Stargaze. You do get about 25% more economic security from mesh security. And so seeing that sort of made me think, look, that's going to be what people are going to want to upgrade to, because you do get that 25% boost. If you had even more provider chains and they were even bigger, you could get more of a boost, right? So that's pretty cool. And I think that tool is really going to help people see, what this. But that's also one other thing is that Sunny proposed this 10% cap, power cap from mesh security. So you'd only get like 10%, only a given chain, no matter how big it is, can only get 10% of the power. If you do that, the total economic security, instead of where the example where there's no power cap, you're gonna get about like 2 billion in security for a consumer chain. But with a 10% power cap, you end up only getting around 200 million. So I think it's going to be a very interesting trade-off space where people are going to be evaluating, like, how much is the economic security worth? Because that's all you get from mesh security. You only get economic security. You still have to run your own validator set. But like, how much is that worth versus how much do I want to cap the control that these other chains might have? So I think that's going to be something that people are going to be, a lot of thinking will evolve around that.
Yeah, very interesting stuff. Udit, do you have any thoughts or comments on that? And I think we can wrap it up.
I personally think that interchain. So I actually don't know the difference between mesh security and interchain security v3. I haven't been following the mesh the mesh.
Oh, it's the same. It's the same thing.
It's the same thing. Okay.
It's just V3, but it works better. So
okay, cool.
Some improvements.
Yeah, I personally am super excited about interchain security V3, and just the idea of these different sort of chains sharing security with each other. I think is like the way that we see how sort of like how natural systems grow, right? It's not we see more of this mesh model than this hub and spoke model, right? And yeah, so I personally am excited about it.
Final question to wrap it up. In a world where mesh security is the end game and most bigger chains become also security providers, where do you see, with Atom 2.0 also coming probably to life in ICS and these kind of things, where do you see the clear product market fit, the one use case for the Cosmos Hub that differentiates to any other chain? Because the Cosmos thesis is this app chain world, right? So where do you see the killer application or the USP for the Cosmos Hub compared to any other chain?
Well, I think that some chains will always stay on replicated security. So ICS V1, what we're launching right now, because like I said, the boost for mesh security, it depends obviously on the market caps involved, but it may not be that much for security boost. And some chains, they don't want to necessarily have their own validator set. I mean, there's a lot of really cutting edge work that's done in other ecosystems where your only option is to launch a smart contract. And the app chain thing is attractive, but with replicated security, you get the low level control of how the chain runs and how the consensus works. But you also get this sort of built-in validator set and built-in economic security of the hub. So I think that there will always be chains that use replicated security. And I think that the hub will always, I think the product market fit of the hub is to be a coordination point in the app chain ecosystem where it's necessary. So for instance, let's say the interchain scheduler, that's going to be a coordination point for MEV and synchronous transactions. And having that one coordination point is beneficial. It helps coordination. So if you look at, and I think that also things have, there's network effects that once you're established doing something, it's like a snowball effect. So let's say Osmosis, for example, came out, was I guess wasn't the first AMM in Cosmos because SIFT-Chain was out too, but they were kind of the first AMM to kind of they gained the upper hand for whatever reason. I think they really embraced IBC, whereas SIFT-Chain was more focused on an Ethereum bridge. But in any case, they gained the upper hand, and so they have all that liquidity, and that's going to be a network effect. So in a world with a lot of different AMMs, I'm sure Osmosis will remain relevant as well. And so for the hub, it's going to continue to be the coordination point. And then also there's another aspect of like the moneyness of Atom, and that's a lot of the debating that's been going around with these different proposals, is people making sure that we're going to retain the moneyness of Atom, and it's like it's like Bitcoin in that way, or gold. So I think that having that moneyness and then figuring out ways to deploy that moneyness and that market cap is also always going to be something that the Cosmos Hub is strong at. And we're also, with the launch of consumer chains, we're going to have kind of this tightly integrated ecosystem of different things made by different teams, and it's going to be sort of like, it's like a little bit more curated than just like Ethereum, where everyone can launch a contract, but it's still got a lot of independence and stuff. So I think you're going to see this bundle of very tightly integrated sort of services that are all working together.
I like that coordination point. That's a good thing. Udit, do you have any final thoughts, final comments, or anything to add?
Yeah. I think a coordination point is like the right metaphor. Coordination point for launching new chains through interchain security, coordination point for funding new chains through this allocator idea, coordination point for block space, which is the scheduler idea, and coordination point for governance as well, right? We'll hopefully going to see more sort of experimentation around governance with the governance model proposed in the white paper, which can also be used for a governance at sort of like an interchain layer, which would be kind of interesting.
Cool. Ghazni has a couple of questions, but maybe that's something for another episode we can do in the future. regarding also liquid staking. I think it's
I have an answer. I have an answer for his question.
Go ahead.
We didn't get to cover Do Kwon's his mesh is not mesh, but his federated security thing, which is pretty cool. But basically, he's asking if you have a staking derivative and then you make another derivative of that derivative. What you do, that's essentially like leverage. Basically, that's how I would think of it. And I'm not super deep into finance or DeFi, but if you take a derivative and then like make another derivative, you end up kind of stacking it, and you get riskier and riskier. So, for instance, with MakerDAO, what people used to do, and I guess probably still do, is they take ETH, put it in MakerDAO, mint DAI, and then they would buy more ETH, put it into MakerDAO, mint more DAI, and basically the more they did that, the more they were leveraged on like the Ethereum price. And so this sort of circular staking derivative thing, what you end up doing is you get more and more rewards, but you're also more and more leveraged on like the slashing risk. But that's, I don't know, that's probably an incomplete explanation, but that's how I think of those kind of circular things. You're just upping the leverage every time around the circle.
And it might just end up in another anchor scenario where you just have some crazy application that's promising high yield, and then everybody deposits it, and then there's a bank run, and then it collapses. I mean, yeah. But anyways, maybe that's something we can go on deeper another time. Go vote, everybody. Proposal 80, 81, 82. I think there's also 70, 79 still live, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, really appreciate your time. Next week is actually a very big week. We have, well, first of all, Cosmos Game of Chains going live on Monday. Monday, the 7th, we also have Atom Lisbon here, which has been the fastest sellout of any event we have done. Tickets were free, but still they were like, within 1 hour, everything was gone. So that's going to be really cool. Then we have also STK Atom from the P-Stake team going live on Tuesday, on the 8th, I think, and a bunch of other cool things. So stay tuned. Also have a couple of cool interviews lined up next week, also with Shane from Stargaze. He hasn't been on for a long time, so it's time to get him back. But yeah, appreciate your time, Jihan and Udit. Jihan, I know it's early for you, so have a great day. Here it's already 3 p.m. So yeah, going for lunch or whatever, some crypto events here. But yeah, thanks everybody. We'll keep in touch and talk soon.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye-bye.